Hey everybody, Steve here. We're in the Illinois store, obviously, and I'm doing something that is part of our Maxwell private sales business. So these are not things that you're going to see on Reverb. These are private sales that take place here. If you want to inquire about these, contact me directly either at vintagedrums@aol.com or you can contact me on my cell, 630-865-6849. What we've got here are some of the finest and rarest Craviotto timeless timber drums that Johnny ever made. These go back to the very, very early days, which was right around the millennium when Johnny did these, late 1999, and a little bit into later into the early 2000s, because some of these were made with shells that Johnny held back. So what I'm going to do is give you a little rundown of what's here. Many of these came directly through me originally, a few did not. So we're going to start with the drum on my left here. This is a 6.5 by 14 Craviotto timeless timber bird's eye maple, and this one's a little bit special because it's not just bird's eye, but it's also got some curly in it. Johnny used to call this curly bird because it had elements of both curly maple and bird's eye maple in it, and it's exceedingly unusual to find either, and even more so both together in the same drum. Now this particular drum, there were only a small number of 6.5 by 14s made. Johnny did a run of 5 for me personally that we sold. This one he did as a one-off, and this was done for a player by the name of Wayne Saltzman II, who was a player over in Europe, as I recall. And this particular drum is 6.5 by 14, as I said, and the chrome plating on the engraved hoops. Now the ones that Johnny did for me, one of which you'll see here shortly, had 24 karat gold plating engraved hoops. So this is a very unique drum. It's the bird's eye and curly. It's a 6.5, which is very rare, and it's got the chrome engraved rims. So it's a very unique build and a special drum. So that's one, and that drum is for sale. Now, this drum is one of the most, I would say this drum is probably ranks number 2, at most number 3 in terms of density of the bird's eye pattern. And this drum, if you look at it, that bird's eye pattern is so dense, it's like buckshot. It's just incredible. It's crazy. And the way vintage guitars, Les Paul vintage guitars that they call bursts from the late 50s, those rare guitars, the more figured and dense the figuring is on those guitars, the more the value increases. The same was true of timeless timber, bird's eye maple. This is a 5.5 by 14, and as many of you know, Johnny did a run of timeless timber with DW, Drum Workshop. Those drums were 5.5 by 14, but Johnny did some runs for me from what he held back as cream of the crop shells. This is one of those shells that Johnny held back. This drum was not made for me. Originally, this drum was made for a dealer in Japan called Rock-In, R-O-C-K-I-N-N, Shinjuku. And Johnny did a very small run of 4 of these immensely densely figured drums for that particular dealer. So this is number 2 of those 4 drums. It's absolutely amazing. And all of these drums are basically in unplayed condition, other than tapped on lately by myself and certain other people who've had the privilege of looking at them. So that's a stunningly beautiful drum and exceedingly rare. Now, this drum is a 6.5 by 14. This is one of the ones I told you about when we were discussing this drum. The original runs of 6.5 by 14, Johnny did a small run. This is drum number 5 of 5 that he did for me. Nice, beautifully dense bird's eye. This particular drum is also lacquered, where the other 2 drums you saw were satin oil. This one has clear coat lacquer on it. It had the nickelwork strainer, and at the time that these drums were made, we're talking about the turn of the century there, around 1999-2000 era, the nickelwork strainer was state-of-the-art at the time. The trick strainer, which is on these other drums, hadn't come to market yet. The nickelwork strainer works very nicely, great. The only thing you could find fault with, I guess, is these are part of these the strainer's plastic. So there was a little bit of stress. You could get a stress fracture on the plastic, but at the time that was state of the art, and this was specially made to be gold plated to match the rest of the drum. This was made for a customer of mine and subsequently purchased back from him, sold to another customer of mine, and that particular person is trimming their holdings down now as they think about the future. So we have this drum back again to sell. Again, there were only 5 of these, 6.5 by 14, clear coat lacquer, 24 karat gold hardware, beautiful dense bird's eye pattern. So that is also available. On the end here, this drum was made for a player whose name is still on the badge. I'll show you. It's Mikio Akahira. And this was a 1 of 1 on the badge. On some of these drums that Johnny made, this drum came through me. We had the badge reflected 1 of 1 because the drum shells were so special from that the ones that Johnny held back. This one is a beautiful pattern to it, beautiful dense bird's eye pattern to it. Of course, 24 karat gold plating with engraving. Now this bird's eye is not as dense as the one you just saw, the one before that, but it's still a very nice dense bird's eye pattern and a beautiful, beautiful drum. So that drum is also available. As we get down here, these are the Timeless Timber Birch series that Johnny did. Again, Timeless Timber, Lake Superior wood. This was 600-year-old maple or birch. Johnny had the rights to this wood for the percussion industry starting back around 1999, and he created these bird's eye and maple drums. They were distributed, the first runs were distributed through Drum Workshop. He did special runs for me, as we mentioned. DW's drums were all 5.5s. For me, Johnny did 4x14s and 6.5s, and unique 5.5s that were done from cream of the crop shells. Now the birch was largely the same idea. Now the birch is a different animal. These were done somewhat differently, and this drum is number 5 of 10 that were done for me. This is a beautiful gloss lacquer over the birch. This is, again, Timeless Timber Birch. So this came out of the collection that was done for me. This drum is number 5 of 10. This is from 2003. And again, these had nickel-plated hardware and engraved rims. And these were still in the days of the nickelwork strainer. The Timeless Timber Birch was a much straighter grain. Birch is a straighter grain than bird's eye or curly maple. So generally what you see here is the normal maple grain. This one's fairly straight with a little bit of figuring in it, but that's traditionally the grain for birch. Now, this next drum, we did 2 short runs of 6.5 by 14 Timeless Birch. This is number 2 of 5 from the first run, and there were 10 drums made, all through me. They're all sold through me. Again, 600-year-old birch, clear coat lacquer, nickel hardware with engraving. This one has the trick strainer on it because it was done a little bit later. And the interesting thing for people to keep in mind, if you want to replace the nickelwork strainer with the trick strainer, it's the same hole spacing, so it's a very simple job, and you can save that one for later and use the trick, which is more functional in my estimation. This drum is a 5.5 by 14. It's a very, very nice grain. This is a much more interesting grain in birch than what we traditionally see. It's a pretty grain. Again, 5.5 by 14. This drum is number 100 of 100. And so this was the last drum in the run. Johnny did the run that were distributed by Drum Workshop, which is what it says on the badge there. And this was drum number 100 of 100. And still in, basically unplayed condition. A couple of little tap marks on the head there. The last one over here is a very, very densely figured special shell, 6.5 by 14 birch. And Johnny did this one, the badge says SPL, special. He did this for the Chicago Vintage Show as a giveaway drum one year. Some lucky person actually won this drum in a raffle. Again, it's beautifully figured. Again, same build specifications. It's got high gloss lacquer. It's got the nickel-plated hardware with engraved rims, nickelwork strainer. But you can see the pattern on this. There's a wavy grain to it that's not traditional with birch. So this is a little extra bonus. And of course, sonically, the Timeless Timber drums are incredible. The maple, there's a great purity to the sound of these. primarily because the wood was so hard to begin with. And Johnny's shell making capacity was incredible, so the drums sound wonderful. The maple, in my opinion, is a little bit warmer. The birch is going to be a little bit brighter and a little more focused. So a little more overtones out of the maple, a little less out of the birch, but they're all fantastic instruments, and every one that you see here is exceedingly rare. So that's the first run here of what we've got. And if you want to talk with me about any of these, as I said, get a hold of me at vintagedrums@aol.com or give me a text 630-865-6849, and we can give you more information about these, send you more pictures, and even do a little sound file for you if you're interested. And I can give you all the pricing and all the details. Thanks.